So what really holds a community together? And more importantly, what causes it to just collapse from the inside out? In this explainer, we're going to dig into the story of Bani Israel to uncover a critical lesson that, honestly, is just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. You know, when a community fails in its divine purpose, our first thought is usually, oh, they must have stopped praying or they lost their piety. But what if the real reason is something way more subtle, something that can creep in even when the mosques, churches, and synagogues are completely full? Well, if we look at the story of Bani Israel, it shows us that their failure wasn't about a lack of worship. Not at all. They were still praying. The real issue was a mission-based failure. They broke their fundamental covenant, that sacred promise they made with God about their entire purpose in the world. So yeah, they were still performing the acts of worship. The breakdown wasn't in their rituals, but in their collective purpose, their why. They had simply lost sight of the mission they were given. A really subtle but, well, fatal disease began to spread within their hearts: selective obedience. They started picking and choosing which parts of the divine command to follow and which parts to kind of ignore. And this wasn't an outright rejection, which makes it a far more dangerous compromise.
Now, to really get the devastating impact of this selective obedience, let's look at a pretty powerful biological analogy. It might seem like a small compromise, but its effects are absolutely catastrophic.
It's a critical question, right? How can failing to obey in just one area lead to the complete functional collapse of an entire community? While the answer is surprisingly similar to what happens during a heart attack. Think about it for a second. Even if only, say, 10% of the heart muscle fails because it's not getting oxygen, it becomes weak and sluggish. It just can't keep up with the synchronous beat of the rest of the heart. This loss of sync throws the entire organ into this chaotic state called fibrillation, where different parts are just contracting at different times. The heart is incredibly busy, but it's not actually pumping anything. The whole system just collapses. So here's the crucial point. When parts of a community decide to fall behind on their obedience, the entire body loses its synchronous power. It might look really active, filled with rituals and activities, but its core function, its mission, has completely failed. It's busy, but it's totally ineffective. Okay, so what does this fibrillation actually look like in a community? Let's take a look at how this internal disease corrupted their most fundamental values. Their original mission was universal, to be a source of compassion and justice for all of humanity. But that got replaced by this narrow, tribal sense of entitlement. Instead of serving a greater cause, they began to take pride in their identity alone, believing they were just inherently superior. And another shift happened. The mission required this perpetual struggle, always trying to better humanity, but that was abandoned for comfort-seeking. Their main goal became just preserving their own luxuries, not striving for any real progress. And this might be the most devastating of all. Their core principles became negotiable. The scales of justice, which should have been unwavering, were now being tipped in favor of convenience or power. Truth and accountability? They weren't absolute anymore. They could be bent, compromised, or just flat-out ignored, which led to a complete erosion of their moral foundation. So ultimately, their religion was reduced from this dynamic, living vehicle for human progress into just a static identity marker. And this shift hardened their hearts, leading to arrogance and defensiveness instead of the humility that's absolutely required for growth. All right, so if the problem is losing the mission, then what's the solution? This brings us to a really crucial concept for understanding divine guidance. How does it keep a community progressing instead of just stagnating? This was a big point of confusion for a lot of people. They saw divine laws being updated or even replaced over time, a process we know as abrogation, and they questioned the consistency. I mean, if God is absolute, why would the rules change? And the answer is pretty profound. Allah's wisdom and the principles of guidance are absolute, for sure. But human society? We are not. We are the ones in a constant state of social evolution. The laws don't change because God changes his mind. The laws change for us to match whatever stage of development we're in.
And we can actually see this principle in action. The prohibition of alcohol, for instance, wasn't just introduced all at once. Nope. It was a gradual process, preparing society for the change. The guidance was perfectly tailored to guide humanity through its different phases of social evolution, from a simpler state to a much more complex and mature one.
So the huge takeaway here is that the Quran isn't some static rulebook to be worshipped as an identity. It's a roadmap for humanity's continuous journey. Its whole purpose is perpetual progression toward excellence, serving as a moral compass that guards and gives meaning to all other forms of knowledge and progress. It's meant to lead us from the front, not be thrown behind our backs.
And that leaves us with one final, really vital question for our own self-reflection. Looking at this history, we just have to ask ourselves, is our community busy with activity but failing in its function? Are we focused just on the rituals, or are we truly synchronized and united in fulfilling our greater mission for all of humanity?